But yeah, welcome everyone again to another episode, if you will, of CYBERPHONK. It's just going to be me today, so there aren't any collaborations, but you know there still might be more as we go forward. So at any point, if you are interested in joining that, then you know you can reach out to me. But otherwise, I'll just carry on going as we are. So we're now going to be stepping into the first, at least the end of the first blocking pass. So as you probably saw in the promo today, there's a little bit of reference that I shot, which does go a little bit longer than what you saw in the promo, all the way to the end of the shots, which we're going to try and block out today. And hey, Animation Addict, how's it going? And yeah, so we're going to be, hopefully, because there isn't another person animating on the side and I'm not having a conversation with them, I'll also be quite focused and, you know, I'll still be speaking to you guys, but I think we'll be able to get a bit more results out of the project because I'll be a little bit more focused on what I'm animating. But in the meantime, the good news that has happened is last week I worked alongside one of my friends and colleagues who joins the streams with us, who was in the last stream as well. I will bring up his surname because I don't want to butcher it right now, but I'll quickly grab that for us. But one of our watchers of the stream, Scott, who I've worked with in the past, used to work at Axis Studios, was helping me figure out how to combine two rigs together so that I could have. There's one element of one rig which I really liked, which was this mechanical arm, which I always intended to have on this character, but I wanted to skin it to her that would still preserve the animation we've made so far. So it took a little bit of trial and error, but we came to a good result. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it's turned out. So now our character does also have a cybernetic arm, which is going to help with a lot of context as we go forward with fleshing everything out. I'll quickly just grab Scott's surname because I want to make sure he gets the credit where it's due. Burgoyne is his name, Scott Burgoyne. So yes, thank you, Scott. I do really appreciate it, and you'll definitely get your credit in the end project when we've wrapped up. But yeah, in the meantime, what I'll do is this is the whole shot in its current state. So I'll play the whole thing. And you can see we've gone a little bit longer than what we initially had. So we were initially just under a minute by a couple of seconds. But I've had to add about 2 to 3 seconds at the end, which you'll see why in a moment. Because as I film this reference, there's a little bit more context needed to get the beats working. So I'll play through it and then, yeah, we'll take it from there. So I'll just pause our lo-fi and then we'll go here. So yeah, that's the final, like, now we're seeing at least the play blast of the entire clip from start to end. So obviously we got some blocking out to do for this reference section today. But as you can see here, we now have this cybernetic arm, which I think has turned out really nicely. And obviously once we do we'll do a rendering treatment on everything, I think it will tie in together very well. But this is also kind of going to give me the possibility here during this moment, which we're going to reblock, probably in the next session that we do online, where I'm going to actually have this sniper be part of her arm, and then that's going to fold into her arm, and then her actual biomechanical arm is then going to like almost like a Transformers thing, kind of like come out and slot into place, and then that's when we see her actual arm. And then all of this, obviously, just for context here for anyone who's new to the channel, there are ropes here that she's swinging across. I just haven't loaded in the assets. And then similar thing as we're getting through here, there are these true extra bots that are kind of giving a bit more context to the shot as well. A lot of this environment hasn't been loaded in as well because I was just keeping it light as I work. So it's going to look a lot more dense than this in the final result. But then this helps give us context through this part here as well. So this part here, we're going to slightly reblock. It's going to be the same poses, but I just want to rework some of these beats so that a blade is going to come out of her arm here. So what I'll most likely do is when we have this little hang time here and she comes up, around this point here, her biomechanical arm is going to then slot back in on itself. And then as she comes through here, a blade's going to come out. And then as she rolls into this, she's actually going to swipe. So I'm going to reblock or like repose some of this so that she then swipes through here. And we're going to have this big blade come through. And it's going to slice off the robot's arm. And then when we get to this point here, around this beat is where maybe in the suspended moments, the biomechanical arm is then going to come back on itself, like it's going to come back into the regular arm. And then as we come through here, eventually we're going to add all these sparks where she's sliding, like where she's grinding down this sign. All these sparks are going to fly out and it's going to break the neon sign. So there's a lot of work to still be done. But we're just focusing on animation purposes for now. And then obviously there's a robot that she holds onto here. And then she crushes the robot with her feet, and she lands onto this cargo ship, which she rolls over and jumps off of. And then this is all pretty similar to what we've been working on recently. The only thing that we've slightly changed the idea of when I've been having these collaboration discussions is around this moment here. Initially, I was going to have her grab a bottle, but actually I thought it was quite a nice idea, like sparking off of ideas that Ajit and Adam had been discussing with me in the past couple of streams. I think actually if she grabs a menu, then as she's coming through here, she's going to, instead of maybe dragging the arm so much, she's actually going to cover her face with the menu, because there might be like another person who's looking out for her here, like saying, have you seen this person? So she's trying to, hide her cover the entire time. And then that's when we reveal the person that she's actually killed, which is going to have this like hole in her chest. This is all placeholder right now. And this isn't the person that she's going to have killed. It's all just context right now, just to give us something to work with. And then, then she's going to land down. And there was an idea that Adam had as well, which I thought was a really fun idea, but I was struggling to get the beats to work with the time and the music. But he initially had this idea that once she lands here, there's going to be a person who has like an olive in a drink, and she picks out the olive, like eats the olive, and then flicks the stick to the music. And I thought that was a cool idea, but unfortunately, the timing just didn't quite work. And so I thought best to keep it simple and not add too many complications. And one beat that I definitely wanted to get in here was that this beat here, where it goes bum bum dum bunk, and there's that beat where she flicks the collar, and that's going to pop the collar here, and it'll stay out a bit further than obviously what the reference does, so that the collar will remain covering her face, so that the robots don't recognize her, is the idea. And then she walks into the bar, and obviously the door opens to the beat. And then as she walks in, there's going to be like this bouncer guy here, and the bouncer's going to pass her something, which is why in the reference I bring my arm out and we grab something, and then she walks in. So the idea is that the bouncer for the bar is the person who commissions the hit to kill the person that's literally just in the crime scene next to him, but he's being very under the radar and inconspicuous. So again, they're like small details that you may not necessarily put two and two together, but there is a narrative, like a very basic narrative that's playing throughout the piece, that gives it a bit more context, and it's not just for the sake of it looking cool. So yeah, that's essentially where we've got to now, that I've done in the meantime since the last stream. And yeah, so we haven't really done any extra animation at this point. We've just replaced the arm and shot some reference. So what we're going to do is, yeah, we're going to start blocking out the last section of the shot. So obviously I've got Maya here, and we've got the run where she comes through, and this is as far as we've got. I do also have the temp ball here to help us with context of timing and spacing as we're coming through, so I know roughly where the ball should be. That's going to land into this contact around here. I know is where I want her to land at that point in time. So what I'll most likely do is, before I figure out the mechanic of her jumping and then landing, I'm just going to do the contact pose on the ground first. And then we can figure out the in-betweens afterwards. Because once I got this pose working, I can kind of put the puzzle pieces together to connect it all together. Because obviously there are different concepts all happening at one time here. So let's bring... We have around this pose here, which I'm going to create a key. I'm glad you like the attitude for that part. Yeah, I've always had it in my mind that that's what she would do. I was trying to put myself in the mind of her. Like, if I was trying to keep myself undercover, but I needed to get past, what would I do to put myself, like, to make myself less suspicious, or, like, draw attention less to myself? So I thought exposing herself without deliberately, like, holding her face or covering her face too much, but, like, doing it just casually with something that she's wearing, I felt a bit more natural. So yeah, this is all in FK right now, which is perfect because that means I can literally just snap to the ball when it decides to load. Hopefully it doesn't crash on me. Yeah, it crashed on me. That's a great start, isn't it? How am I planning to do the collar part with this rig? So the rig actually does have controls on the collar. I believe you can, like, they're not locked to anything. And the beauty of when you're not working on a production is you can edit the rig however you want, really. The same way that I've used this biomechanical arm. That's obviously not part of the rig initially, like the original parts of the rig. So yeah, we have flexibility to change things. I can add things to the rig if I really need them, but in this case I do believe the jacket has quite a few controls on it. And that's another thing to say, I haven't animated any of the hair or any of the jacket so far in this piece, really. I think for the very first, maybe the first 2 seconds of the action at the beginning of the shot, I did begin to pose the jacket and the hair, but realized it was becoming quite high maintenance to do when I was still figuring out the concept. I didn't want to spend all that time blocking out the hair, only to then realize, this actually isn't working, so I'm going to have to do it again. So in the end, I ended up just simplifying things for now. So once I got the actual core mechanics working, then I'm going to go in and I'll do a pass on the hair and the jacket as well, just to give that a little bit more secondary action. Then we should have our picker. That's all good. And yes, we did keep that pose. I tweaked that a little bit since the last stream, so that's all good. So we're back to where we were. I'll just make sure Studio Library is loaded. So we've got that as well, because that will come in handy for hand poses. Just bring that down. Cool, we should be good. We're back. So we had this beat in here. This contact on the down, I want to begin to block this out. So I know roughly she needs to be here. And I don't expect her to do any crazy spins or twists in this moment. I think I'm going to keep this a little bit more casual, the way she hops down. She'll probably do, like, she'll still have some hang time, but I don't think we're going to go crazy on it. So just make sure we reset the spine and her legs, because they're all in FK right now, so I need to switch that over to IK for the landing. And then her arms as well all need to be reset too. So now, before we go any further, We've also got some squash and stretch still in her head there. I was wondering why it felt weird. There you go. Is there any translates in there? No, there is translates on her head. There you go. Now she feels in proportion. So I need to make sure that we switch her feet to IK before we go any further. Which then, yeah, they're going to go in a crazy position. So just to be safe, let's not snap to vertexes because we may get another crash. Let's just do it all manually, which I know isn't ideal, but better to not crash again. So I do want to follow the reference to a degree with this. I might make the timings, the timing will most likely be the same, but the spacing and the poses we may push a little bit. But I'll use the reference as a base for posing, and then from there we can push it a bit further if necessary. Which, when I say if necessary, most likely we'll push things. We'll exaggerate our lead and follows, and we'll do all our due diligences and our principles. So we're coming through. I'll most likely change the arms as well. It's so nice to now be working with this biomechanical arm though. It's something that's always been in the back of my mind that I'm like, I really want to just have it in here, but I just haven't got to that stage yet. But now we're pretty much there. So we're coming through with the left leg into the contact, so it might be quite nice at this stage to already have this arm coming around a bit more, and this left arm will be passing back. So at least we have this as a base now to build from going into the jump. Yeah, no worries. Hope you have a good one, Josen. Cool. So now we can do this run part. So I want to make sure I also get the hang time pose, which is roughly around here. We create another key. I can probably already begin to use Tween Machine for this. Just validate the license on Animbot. There you go. So we get this nice suspended hang time, which we all know I love a hang time based on the last couple of streams. But it really helps with the rhythm. Get this really clean sense of, yeah, the overall timing of the shot. So as we're coming off, I did have this idea she may kick off the wall, which may mean that like her right leg is definitely going to be leading down, which means the left leg will be staying behind. So I might do this thing where we're slightly tilting this foot this direction. So we're still in FK at this point. We're still in the air. Trying to think what I want to do with the arms as well. So we're running through. They're going to swing open, come through. I might be able to actually get a little bit more of the leg. Maybe it's full. I'm trying to think if it's going to be foreshortened or if I just want that leg to be further back. I can hide the ball now. Might be nice to get the straight in the leg already to get this lead. Now it's a question of what I'm doing with the arms as we come through. Maybe I actually can keep the legs bent for longer. Again, this is where I haven't visualized a pose. I'm kind of playing around and just figuring out what works best for the moment. And we may end up revisiting the poses later. But I definitely want to get this feeling that we're coming through and we're landing down. But do I keep the arms back? Maybe I do just keep the arms back this entire beat. But yeah, by all means, guys, if there's a question that you're curious about regarding the project or anything we've discussed in previous streams, then don't hesitate to ask away. Or just anything you're interested in, anything that maybe you said online that you thought was cool, anything maybe you've been watching recently. I've recently been watching Alien Earth on Disney Plus. It's available on Disney Plus in the UK. I think it's on other channels if you're in the US. But yeah, I'm really enjoying that. Has anyone else been watching that one? I'm quite a big Alien fan. Trying to find the right angle for this leg so that we feel the kick pushing off, but still connecting to the spine. We'll try something like this for now. And then I'll probably pose the hands as well. Just get them in a nice place. That's her left hand. Something like this. And then the same for the right. Just make sure we save that as we go along. Trying to actively remember to keep it saved. You lied, you're still here, watch it later because you want to ask questions. That's fair, I encourage you to, man. Like, stick around, you know, that the stuff on YouTube isn't going anywhere. You'll always have access to that stuff. And if there are questions on the YouTube stuff, you can either, on like the videos from the YouTube channel, you can reach them, you can ask them in here in the next stream, or you can just comment in YouTube. I'll always respond to them. When I'm moving the upper chest controls, whenever you are moving the upper chest controls, or at least the chest button in the picker, why are the hips also moving? Yeah, so that's part of the rig. So the upper spine doesn't have any of that, it's isolated, but the lower half, it does have this connectivity to the hips as well. It's kind of like an automated part of the rig to keep that stuff anatomically connected, because whenever you bring your chest forward, or at least when you up your upper spine, when you begin to hunch that forward, naturally your hips, your pelvis will also curl in the same direction. So it's kind of automating a level of it for you, but I think you still need to do some extent of it yourself as well. Like this, for example, just trying to push those shapes a little bit more so you get that nice clean line going through. I might be able to push this arm back a little bit more, maybe even twist the chest a little bit too. And then we get that nice contrast between what the neck and the head and the chest is doing. Something along these lines. So now that we've got this jump pose and then we've got the landing, we can do the kickoff pose. So I can look at my ball just as a base to see where the kick happens. So it's roughly going to be around here. Now we've already kicked off the wall in this ball, but I do feel like we could again punch up that spacing. So I'm going to use this key, maybe a couple of frames earlier, just to give it a little bit of breathing room, but we can make it nice and punchy in that hang time. So at this stage here, as we're coming through, we definitely want that right leg that was passing through the action to already be planted against the wall. I know that much. And we also need to begin to transition the spine, which we can arc it away from the wall. Don't worry about what the robot is doing. It's probably best to hide that for now, just so we don't get distracted. And then this right leg is going to be contacting the wall. So I'm cheating the angle a little bit, but then this gives us the opportunity in here to drag that left leg for longer. So we get that nice line of action. Try and find that balance so it doesn't feel like it's dragging too far. And then these arms definitely need to continue to drag back. I'm going to have to twist the chest, I think, a little bit as well. The neck is also slightly broken. This is just the nature of doing everything in FK. Obviously, this is also very small right now. I'll make it bigger for you guys so you can actually see. Sometimes I work that small. I don't know if anyone else does that. Sometimes you just get in like a rhythm of what's happening in the shot that you end up not even like zooming in. You just kind of do it. So you might be able to slightly drag the hands here. So that right hand is going to taper a little bit. And then that's where we're going to push off the wall on the next key. So we have this antic, and then we're going to push off. So this is going to be quite punchy in here. I do get the impression now, playing it through, that maybe this is actually going to be quite slow. So at this point here, maybe what I may end up needing to do is take this key, bring it earlier again, so that it gives us a bit more time to then push off into this, to then have the hang time, because I felt like there was maybe too much time getting to this point here, because based on this trajectory, based on how quick she's running, it does feel like, if I just go back a few frames, we're going through this pretty quick. Like, this is literally every 2 frames. So maybe I want to make this every 4. Maybe that'll feel too slow. Maybe I can just suspend in that anticipation for a little bit of time, because if this is very quick, maybe we just begin to ease into the anticipation a little bit. So then we can lead up with this foot. Just a little bit in here to reach this contact. A little earlier. Like this. And then we can drag that leg behind a bit. And then it comes through. Now we're easing into this slightly. Definitely does feel like we're going to spend a bit more time in this antic though, so I don't want to spend too much time either. That's the tricky part. Yeah, there are a couple of things in rigs. I'm just seeing the comments. There are a couple of things in rigs where you see that automated stuff. It's not often. I have seen maybe 1 or 2 other rigs that have this like hip connectivity kind of thing, but it does comes with problems as well. If you don't want it to do that thing, you end up having to counter it. So, you know, you have to kind of pick your battles, I suppose. But maybe in here there's like I've got arm space, leg space, body space. There's nothing to do with hips though, so I don't actually think I can turn it off in this, which is interesting. Yeah, you can see that foot is still sliding technically, so we might be able to get that foot a little further forward. There we go. Do I ever work with an IK chest? Rarely. Sometimes if something's very cartoony, or if I want to really polish something that most of the work has already been done in FK, and I just want to convert it to IK for like tracking things in world space. You can do a little bit of that. I don't do it all the time. If I really had the time to polish stuff up like that, then that's maybe one technique I would do. Because then a lot of the work has still been done in FK to kind of preserve the volume of the character and the anatomy. But then you get the advantages of like being quite flexible using IK. The issue with using IK out the gate for me, because I used to be like IK everything, even arms all the time, just like permanently in IK for everything. And the issue with that is, even though at the beginning there's a benefit to how quickly you can pose and it's quite flexible because you can just translate everything, the issue is you start to lose some of the volume of your character, and the anatomy and the arcs start to get a little bit broken. So unless you're really vigilant, and you end up spending a lot more time in refine, really tracking that stuff and making sure that you're preserving that anatomy, sometimes it's not worth it. It also depends on the style. If it's more cartoony, I would probably more lean into IK, because you want that squash and stretch feeling. But in the best of both worlds, you have a hybrid system. So you have FK spine with IK over the top, so that you could do all your connectivity in the FK and all the anatomy and all the arcs, but then you can layer in the squash and stretch using the IK over the top of it. That stuff is like perfect. But not every rig has that. I would say most industry standard professional rigs have, occasionally they'll have that like hybrid system, but it's not all the time. So I'm going to bring these arms around a little bit here. And then we're going to have this kick pose, which is going to be roughly around here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, roughly here. So also let's just turn this by the little hologram thing. We don't need that right now. What's the best way to hide it? We have, I'll just call it warning hologram, so that I know that's turned off, so I can turn it on later. And then we can do our kick pose. But yeah, these are great questions. I really appreciate them. How do you prefer to work? Do you like IK? Do you like FK? Like, do you kind of like flexible and it's depending on what's going on? So this is going to be our push-off pose. We're getting the root position first. And then I'm going to already hit the spine shape quite early. And then that leg is going to kick back. So we want to make sure we get a definite straight on the lower leg. What space is this in? Oh, it's just the upper leg. I was wondering why the angle of the leg was so strange there. It makes more sense now. So then the right leg's already going to come through a bit more. So this is the parting position on this right leg. Or it's the left leg, sorry. My bad. I will readjust the camera. I know she's going off screen right now. So I'm going to tuck this in, and then she's going to rise up a bit more into the hang time. So we get a little bit of contrast in here as she comes through. Then we can begin to unfold the fingers. So again, just using Tween Machine hotkeys to do that stuff. I don't know how well this kick is going to read, but you might feel it more than you'll see it at least. That's the intention. And then we're going to have a hang time in here. Yeah, because I'm kind of cheating the way she kicks right now. See that path that she's creating? I might just need to keep it up higher. And then I'll tweak the camera after. I want to make sure I get at least the path working first. And then this is where she goes into the air. And then she's going to begin to drop down. So then this leg should probably stay straight for a little bit longer. This leg can already begin to come through. I know we're kind of animating off camera right now, but I guess I can already begin to tweak the camera so that you guys can actually see what we're doing. Sometimes I can kind of figure it out without needing to do this stuff straight away, but it might be worth it for you guys just so you understand what's going on. So in here, we need to bump this rotation X up, especially as we get to here. I can already see this maybe needing to rise a little, but definitely by here, we want to be bringing this up so that if anything, it might even help us like pay more attention to her just for a beat before she drops back down. We'll see how that plays later, but that's just enough to give us something to work with for now. So she's pushing off, she's suspending in the air. Keeping the arm a little straighter. The hand's been already splayed. Oops. Undo. I accidentally selected the leg, but I didn't mean to. Oh. Fine, I'll just repose it. There we go. And then we're coming through. And then this is where she begins to drop. Now at this point here is definitely the contact on the right foot. So roughly around here. So let's just save this. Got a few things in the chat already. That's really cool. Just check out what we're doing. Haven't worked on a personal shot in probably over a year. My professional work is Minecraft anim, so I'm pretty much always FK. Oh, that's fair. Is that like when you say professional stuff is Minecraft? Is that like for official Minecraft, as in the actual game, or like more promotional stuff that's related to the game? Just out of curiosity. Either way, it's really cool. I was very into Minecraft in its inception, and every now and then I still got like the idea of it in my mind. I'm still like, oh, that could be fun to go back to, but I just know it's a very different game now, so I would almost want to play like the original core version of it, where it's like very rudimentary and it's more just about very basic survival. Do you think a person can reach a decent level of 3D animation by studying and practicing for a year? Yeah, for sure. I don't necessarily think there's obviously a level of time required for most people to get to a certain level, but I would say that it's not necessarily like, it's definitely a factor of time is one part of it. Some people do naturally pick up things faster than others. That's another factor. But I think the main takeaway, I would say, is it's not so much... I think it's finding the right material and the right structure in order to really streamline the process so that you can learn in a year. So I mean, the place that I used to work for, Animation Mentor, did something like that, where they've obviously given you a structure, and obviously you're paying for those resources, but they've given you a structure, and they've given you mentorship, and they've given you classes, so that it streamlines the process so that you can achieve pretty good results within a year or a year and a half. Even within like within the first year, if you were doing Animation Mentor just as an example to work from, you'd have done 4 classes, which would have gone through all of the body mechanics. So essentially everything that I've been doing in this stream is covered to that extent. And then you're already starting to step into acting and doing more subtle stuff. And then you've got maybe another 2 classes after that. So their program is within a year and a half, you can achieve a results where you could go into the industry and you've covered most bases to at least give you an understanding of what you could tackle in most scenarios. Obviously not every scenario. There's still scenarios that when I get casted shots, I don't have a clue like how to approach it and I have to figure it out. But yes, I would say that within a year you could. It's more about really finding the right structure that will work for you and knowing how to, because there's a lot of material out there, and there's some of it is valuable, some of it's very valuable, and other things aren't so important, or they take you down the wrong direction of where they're saying, oh, you should do this thing first, when actually there may be something else that you should have done before it, or actually you could skip it entirely. So like, I think there are different methods you could go to achieving that result, but I think finding the right material is a very big factor into how quickly you can get to a quote-unquote decent level. And I don't think you need to go to an online school, just to be clear, when you do those things. Like, you don't have to, but it definitely helps. Like, you're given some reassurance that you are given some structure, essentially. I'm just tracking her path. If you track, I use this sometimes, which is quite handy. If you turn on the grid in your viewport, you can actually see in screen space how it's traveling across to the center of the frame, and see how right now when we kick, we just bounce straight to the right. Now, it is traveling. Maybe it'll work. I'm going to leave it for now, but maybe later it might be worth tweaking that path so it doesn't abruptly shift to the right. Maybe it actually feels quite nice. I'm not going to rule it out straight away, but that is something that's going to be on my radar for sure. So as we're beginning to drop here, I definitely want to get a little bit of the spine to drag just a little bit in here, and then her head's still going to be pointing down, but her neck's going to drag, and then her foot's already going to make contact to the ground. So we'll see that's her left leg is going to go into IK. So now I can see the position of where the body's actually going to land, which is already quite far to the left. Can you see that transition? So this is where I was thinking, if I need her to be at this point here, I kind of want to wrap it around, because right now our path is kind of doing this. Like, it comes up, we're going forward, and then when we jump, instead of kind of coming around with that trajectory and then we come in like this, it's kind of doing this. So we kind of need to wrap around more to the left, but so then we can transition more to the right. So I'm actually going to try and tweak that now before we go too far. So the best way to do this, at least the approach I would do, is I'll go into the graph editor and I have my translation X here. So I can see that by this point here, you can see my spacing. I can bring it over to the center here so you can actually see the graph editor a bit clearer. But especially from this point here, so this is the key where we're pushing off. Right now, this curve, if I were to spline it, is quite linear, right? We need to tighten this a lot. So I'm just going to ease this all in really tight. And see, you know, it's always sometimes easier, or rather better, just to go like really exaggerated to begin with and then taper it off if you need to. But now can you see here as I land down, see how she's a bit more in front of the leg? or she's aligned with the leg rather. But we don't really. It's a tricky balance. Technically, she can only change direction once she's touched the ground. So I will tighten it, but maybe not as much. So it's going to be somewhere around here. I've got to keep an eye on my inertia as well and the speed of her as she pushes away. But now you can see that she's much further to screen left than we initially blocked. So I need to tweak some of this posing a little. I have to try and find that sweet spot. To at least feel like, there you go, at least now we're traveling to screen left, so we're slightly cheating it, but it allows us to kind of preserve the poses a bit more. Because I don't want to... This is where you have to like battle a little bit with what's logical and what's actually ideal for the shot. And then she's coming down this leg. We're going to slightly bring up and in. So this is now passing through. This is our follow through on the right, on her right leg. Obviously this leg is very stretched right now. It's more just to give me a base. And then let's keep those arms dragging for longer. I'll check the chat in a second. Keep those their hands splaying for longer. So we are coming through. Yeah, this is interesting because actually this is where the leg is passing, so we're almost delaying. I may need to delay that right leg to not follow through. Either that or we rework this pose, which, to be fair, I'm not attached to it right now anyway. It was just a base to build from, so we may tweak that a little bit more. We can bring this arm in, get that nice straight going through. Let's check the chat before we go any further, before it gets built up. I've been working with a company called Element Animation, but they've been doing some contract work for Mojang for the past few years, making trailers and such. That's really cool, man. Awesome. Do you enjoy it there? Yeah, promotional stuff, but working with Mojang. So you have to follow a lot of their rules. So no bendy chests, no squash and stretch. They love keeping it vanilla. Yeah, it's really tricky when you have stuff that's like very branded like that. Hey Karan, how's it going? Great to see you here in the chat. Hope you're good. Yeah, I'm also looking for remote positions. Hey, we're all looking for work. But no, definitely trying to, yeah, hook up Animation Addict. Hi Isabel, how's it going? Great to see some new people in the chat here. Hope you're all doing good. So excited to be able to join this time. It's been a while. Yeah, it's really cool to see you in here, Shelley. Cheers. Slightly cheating positions in the half of the battle in animation, to be fair. Yeah, that's true. There's like, I do try to keep it logical, but on the occasion there are those moments where it's like, is this really aiding the shot by doing it logically? If it works and it can be logical, then sure, you get the best of both worlds. But if it just simply doesn't work, sometimes it's just, you just got to cheat it. Yeah, I'm all good, thanks. Doing very good. Glad to be sinking my teeth into this a little bit more often. And depending on how work goes, I may be doing this more regularly as well. In the meantime, while I am looking for work. So, yeah, there might be more streams more consistently. And by more consistently, I mean if I'm not working, I'll probably be streaming every day. Like, at least during the week. So we'll definitely be plowing through this a lot faster if I don't get work. So for your guys' sake, maybe you'll be praying for me that I don't get work. We'll see. We'll see. Right, so now it's coming through. Then she lands. We have this contact here. And then we're going up. We have another contact here. So I definitely want to plan these contacts. So you have a step here. So we're coming through and around. Now we're beginning to come upright. Just check what her neck is doing. Yeah, it seems to be fine. Let's just get these contacts working. Because you can already see that foot's peeling behind, which is good because this is the contact, so that leg should be a bit further behind. But you can see the height is also not quite working for us right now. So this back foot is going to have a roll on it. I think it's that control, yep. And then let's reset our rotations on the spine. And then that will give us a base to at least get an idea. I also need to double check there aren't any bent bones that have accidentally been translated at any point. I don't think there are, but you never know because that's obviously going to change how the knees work. But that seems to be fine. And that foot. So she can be a little bit higher. Something around this position. And then as she was coming down, from the down, she will be rotating back a little. And then this foot needs to have a little bit of the roll in the back. Is it this one? Nope. Is it this one? Nope. Is it this one? No. Which one is it? Maybe it's just the rotate. I guess it's something like this. And then let's get a little bit of the spine connectivity going now. So let's just chuck the reference on the layer before we go any further. This guy. So I can hide that when I don't want to see it. I'll just call it end ref. Is it a free rig? Yes, it's your choice. Is the answer. So I'll find a link to the rig. It's called NC11, I think, but it's done by a Sony animator called Arthurnal, or at least he used to be at Sony. I don't know if he still is. Gumroad. He only has one thing on his Gumroad, but it is this rig. You can check it out here. Just put it in the chat. But that's where the original rig is. This guy. So there are two people that come with it. Obviously, this one you can choose how much you pay for, and it's like, but obviously by your own choice. You don't have to pay for it. I did pay for it. Obviously, I do know the guy to an extent as well. It is free, but I was like, I'm putting so much time and effort into this and it's a good rig that I felt like he deserved something. So I did pay for the rig, but that was my choice. And also, I think it's because I knew him, you know. But obviously, I don't expect everyone to do that. So get a little bit of twist. I still feel I want to get a nice straight in that front leg. But to do that, I'm really having to push this leg quite far forward. So I want to make sure I get the balance right. This is roughly the stride it would take. And then the arms were coming up, I believe. Yeah, they're tucking into her jacket. So again, this is where, in theory, you would want to maybe begin to start working in IK as they come up to grab the jacket. But for now, just for basic blocking, I'm going to keep it in FK, just so I don't have to worry too much about all the technical switches. And also I'll make sure I separate the timing of the arms so they don't come up exactly together. It'd be nice to have one hand that's still slightly opened up. So I'll do that with her right hand. Maybe something like this. As it's coming through to grab the jacket. I can restage the camera as well after, once I figure out the main blocking. Yes, this is Maya. As is the rig, just to be clear, in case that's what you were asking. And then the next contact is this one here. So this is where she's now... I do want her to kind of be like looking under her shoulder. So I don't want her to be like looking over her shoulder so that she's like very drawing attention to herself. I want to kind of look her... She looks a little bit inconspicuous as she pops it. So her head's going to be tilted similar to the ref, but maybe a little bit more tilted down. So we'll do the next step. So I know that the foot now needs to be planting the floor. And then that's going to give me the position. She wraps around for the next stride. This is where the reference obviously gives you like some information, but it isn't going to give you the exact position, and like the proportions of your character are going to determine a lot of these things. And then once I get this main blocking, I can then rework some of it to get the balance right and the spacing, etc. But you have to build off of something, right? So in these early stages, I normally just get like a main base just to build from, so that we have something functional. So this isn't going to be like final posing as I go through this. I'll probably be reworking stuff as we go, but I just want to make sure I have something to work with. So I'm going to connect the hips again, just in rotation. Again, once I get into the nuances, I'll do the tilts and the weight shifts and that kind of thing. So that back foot is going to be coming off the floor. Needs to be a little higher again. And then I'm actually going to arch her spine back, so her rotation X in her spine, we want to be getting that nice line of action as she leads her body back, which then by extension will do the hips as well slightly. I don't want to go too far, but I do want to get a little bit of that fun attitude in there. So then her head's going to be tilted like this direction as she looks under herself. Like she's kind of... her neck will be forward to help both with anatomy and with the attitude. And then her arms, at this point, I probably will put it in IK, at least for this contact point. So let me just save this before we go any further. Actually may want to bring this foot a little bit more to the left. And then I'm going to switch out her arms into IK. Oops, that was a foot. Okay, IK. So at this stage, both hands will definitely be on her jacket. And again, I'm not snapping vertexes. I don't trust it anymore after that crash earlier. So this left hand is going to be tucked in on her jacket collar. Elbow out, shoulder up. This is where I'm so glad and relieved now watching it actually respond, that this rig, like the biomechanical arm, is actually responding well to the IK as well on the rig. It's always when you're doing these tests and you're rig wrecking, and you know, especially when you're modding rigs that already exist, like so many things can go wrong. So it's quite a relief to actually see this working. Something along these lines. And then this hand, both the hands need to be in like a held, like a fist pose. So this is her right, which is this one. And then this is her left, which is this one. Obviously I'm not posing the face right now. But again, this is just to give us a base. Not too concerned at this stage. Also, like the squash and stretch on her head right now, there are these rotations. It's actually been bothering me this entire time. So before we go any further, let me just zero out her rotations. And her translate. Because this entire time there was like a pose that I had put on the rig at some point or another. And there was some rotation added to her squash and stretch of her face. Or there's something in her face rig that something was posed. And it caused her face to be skewed. So it looked always a little bit weird. The same with her hair. Like her hair is not in its neutral position right now. So it doesn't, the model on her face doesn't quite work, but I'm just focusing on body mechanics for now. No, it wasn't the FKIK change that caused it to crash. It was if you hold V in the middle click, it snaps to a vertex in your scene. And sometimes that causes my Maya to crash. I don't know if anyone else experiences this. Like, you know, you get an object, say, I want this object to be on her elbow. So then you'd hold V, middle click, and it would snap to the elbow. My Maya doesn't tend to like it when I do that, especially when there's like dense scenes like this. So it wasn't Animbot though. But that being said, to add to that, my Animbot FKIK switch can't work with this rig because all the switches are on a separate control. And the way that Animbot works is that it recognizes the position of that control and then can switch within that same position. But if the position of the switch control isn't on where the position of the hand is, then how does it know where to put the position? So it doesn't work, in other words. So it's a bit frustrating. So whenever I have to do FKIK switches, in this case I'm having to do it manually. But this shot isn't going to be splined, it's mostly going to be stepped, but we'll be going on 1s and 2s. So because I'll be doing it that way, I think it should be quite manageable. Like, I won't need to do any crazy switches. No worries, Josin, just seeing the... Yeah, it was great to have you in the stream, and cheers for the questions. Definitely stay tuned, and yeah, check out the other ones on YouTube, as you mentioned earlier, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, and yeah, put any comments if there's anything you're interested in the channel, and yeah, see you in the next one. Curious how to see how I brought in the robot arm. Yeah, so I can go over that in a moment. Maybe halfway through our blocking, I'll just quickly jump into that. Or maybe I can just launch another Maya in the meantime. We'll do it that way. That way it won't crash this one. I'll let that load in the background. But yeah, I can show you how it was, how we modded it. I don't know exactly how it was rigged because I only did part of it. But like I say, I had a friend who helps me out there. So I'll open up the original rig, which is on Agora's channel, Agora community. They have a rig called Symmetro, which is based on Symmetra from Overwatch. And she has this biomechanical arm, which I'll load now. And you may actually have noticed that in my very old promotions for CYBERPHONK, I actually use this rig, like as part of the promoting material. Because I originally was gonna animate with this rig. I think you can see it. Where are we? Here. So this was like a customized version of that same rig. I just replaced the hair and the visor and that kind of stuff. And then the textures. But this was the rig I was going to use for CYBERPHONK originally. And then I discovered the other one that we mentioned earlier, and I really liked her jacket. It kind of reminded me of Akira and Ghost in the Shell, and I felt like I could customize it in a way that felt better. But this is the original Symmetra rig. But I always really liked this biomechanical arm. So essentially what we did, and don't worry, I will credit both rigs and both riggers in the final piece. But what I did is I took the geometry of this, exported it onto exported it into the scene just as an OBJ into the other rig, and then we posed our rig, the major rig. I call it major, but the other rig, we posed it into the same position as this arm geometry, and then basically skinned it, like copied the weights, and then copied over the rig so that it was then skinned onto this as well. And then we just hid the geometry on the other one. So all the geometry in our current rig here is still there. It's just hidden. And so that won't get rendered out when we come to the final piece. But yeah, that's the general idea of how it was set up. Yeah, no worries at all. I'll always stop to answer every one of your questions. So we're coming through, and then there's this beat here, bonk. So we want to make sure we hit this accent, what I'm going to do first, because this is during a passing position here, you see this foot is actually swinging through. This is like little hang time here. I want to get this pose first. So we want to find out where the contact position is. So we'll block that in, because that's where our main, when we're doing walks, I kind of treat the contact poses as the key poses, which is how you're traditionally taught, but it does actually make sense to me. Like, that's not like a mind-blowing piece of advice to anyone. I'm sure most people have heard this advice. It's like how Richard Williams teaches people in his survival kit. Like, it's nothing new, but it is very useful. So it kind of helps you think about contact poses as your key poses, and then passing positions as your breakdowns. So now we're beginning to turn. Again, we can tweak some of these positions where the feet need to be. Once I get this position working, I can then use oh bugger, I was using the wrong control. I can then use I can clean up the root in the graph editor, get that trajectory working, and then that will help indicate the weight and the balance of where the feet need to be. There's roughly this position. And then this leg is peeling back, this foot. Which you can already see now, that foot, to get that balance working correctly, all of this needs to be further forward. There's something around here. And then she's going to begin to lean forward, which is also going to change the pose slightly. So her hips are tucking under. She's going to be slightly leaning forwards. I want to get a little bit more of a hunch to her as she steps into this as well. So at this point, her arms are going to go back into FK because they've now let go. So we can switch her arms back to FK. She's with her arms up like this. She's starting to look like Vi. I'm also very aware of this with her jacket as well. Like if the jacket was red and she had red hair, like crimson-y hair, she would basically be Vi from Arcane. I kind of get that vibe from her. And I think I subconsciously embraced that a little bit in some of the reference. So the way she kind of walks off at the end, I kind of had her implying her hands are in her pockets and she's quite stiff and she kind of like walks with her root and like a little bit in her shoulders, but it's more like a masculine brute kind of walk. So yeah, that's something that was definitely kind of being embraced as I did the reference there. Did I have to animate the robot arm over again for the whole shots? No, so that's what I wanted to avoid. So essentially by copying the weights and having it be bound to the existing rig, I could just use it as a reference. So then I could go into this scene, I could replace the reference with the new arm bound to the rig, and then everything just carried on as it is. So that's what it took. I was pretty experimenting with Scott doing this for maybe like 3 or 4 days, where we were like, oh no, this thing exploded, this thing didn't work. Like Scott was having issues with I was having issues with the arm, he was having issues with the hand. I could get the hand to work, he couldn't get the arm to work. I couldn't get the arm to work. So we kind of had to collaborate a little bit there to get it to work, but he was an absolute godsend, honestly. Because I was starting to really get frustrated about trying to make it work, and it just wasn't working for me. But he managed to he had a script which helped with binding and skinning. So that helped a lot. So I'm just checking here. I want to see what that hand is actually doing. Oh, they're both coming down together. Okay, I want to offset that slightly. Don't want to have the exact same timing. Do I know rigging too? No, that's the one thing that I'm really just like inadequate at. Like I could do lighting a bit, I could do modeling a bit, I can comp a bit, I can do effects a bit, but I can't rig. So that was one area that I knew was going to be a problem, and I knew the longer I left it, the more frustrated I was going to be that I didn't know if this whole project was even going to work, because I really wanted this arm to be in here. So that was a tricky one, but thankfully I did manage to get it to work. So now that I have this moment here, this is definitely the beat where we're going to be passing through. We're going to be up, get a little bit of hip connectivity in there. We want to be shifting our weight over that leg a bit more. Let's reset all of that. And then this foot's going to be passing through. And it is kind of doing this kick swing thing as it comes through. There's like a little hang time it's going to do. So this is where the shoulders and everything's going to pop the collar forward. So at this point, we still want to stay in an IK on the arms. They're just going to come forward. It's definitely going to be tricky to try and get this to read. To get the jacket with her head and everything cluttered here. So something like this, and then I can begin to block in. I think I have the jacket controls down here, so I can begin to block this in. I don't even know half what these controls do because I haven't really been using them. So we'll definitely have to experiment with that a bit to see what's doing what. So that's her lower half. Here's a bit of the upper. Is this? Here we go. We're getting into the collar section now. So if I were to rotate this out, I might just translate a bit of it as well, if necessary. See how you get this like sharp angle here? That's something that I quite liked, so I can just pop this out a bit more. I wanted to make sure that in the silhouettes we cover a little bit of her face. You know, we can exaggerate it if necessary. I wanted to make sure that it really reads. And then we'll have to do the same on the other side. When I focus on those jacket controls, it really doesn't like it. So is it this guy? Yeah, so this one's going to come out. So make sure that in the silhouette here, that pops out. Something along these lines. And then from this point onwards, that jacket is just going to remain popped out like this. Yeah, I'm definitely going to need to tilt the camera up a little bit in a moment. Either that or the focal length goes a bit wider. I'm not sure yet. I might even just pull out the camera a little bit. I think maybe just rotating will do the job, what we need. There you go, you do read the jacket. Find a little beat there. And then there's a little suspended hang time with that foot. So we're going to keep the weight a little bit on this back foot. It's not quite going to be a tighter ease out. This foot's going to stay in the air a bit longer. Then the weight comes down. I might even go into like a bigger stomp here with this foot so it just hits down straight away. Just gives it a little bit more lead. And then this arm, we're coming through, get a little bit of lead on the chest. And then this arm, it is going to be an FK at this point because we've let go, but it still needs to be easing out. Same with this one. Definitely needs to be higher up. Because this one was delayed even more than the other one. Like I took tech arts last year, and man, it's not what I was expecting. I ended up submitting a broken rig. Yeah, I feel that, man. We did do a little bit of rigging when I was in university all those years ago. But yeah, I could see I do like technical and I do like creative. As you guys know from previous streams, I do prefer to lean more in the creative side, and there is a creativity aspect to rigging, but it definitely leans. I would say that if you had an animator can be like 60% in general. I would say that you can be like 60% creative and 40% technical. And that's still quite a lot of technical, even for like someone who's just like creating the stills, like the poses and stuff, right? But the way you approach it can still be very technical. Whereas I'd say riggers can be like 60% technical and still 40% creative. So there's still a lot of creativity involved in what they do. And then obviously you can have the extremes of those spectrums as well. So like obviously it can be even more technical than that with rigging as well, and maybe slightly less creative and more methodical. So yeah, it is an interesting one. I definitely, like I say, I admire anyone who can rig. Like one of my closest friends is a rigger and he animates on the side. So it's really cool that he can just like, if he has a model, he can just like pick it up and he makes his own games like in his free time and stuff. And he like creates his own assets. He can rig them, then he can go in and animate them. So yeah, I definitely admire that. At this stage of animation, do you check your graph editor or are you just blocking without to worry about the curves? I'm thinking about the curves as I'm manipulating in the camera, if that makes sense. So I am still considering spacing, and what I will do is once I've done this main initial pass, I will go into the graph editor even in stepped, and I will like check the curves, especially on the root control, make sure those work, and then I'll like tweak what I need to at this stage if necessary, and then from there I can begin to add more in betweens and start to flesh things out more. How long did it take me to become a lead animator? My first lead role was on DreamWorks Dogman, and that was only last year. So technically, we was on that for a year. So the year before that, so 2 years ago. So we're looking at around between 7 to 8 years it took me to become a lead animator. I was a senior for quite a while before that. Oh damn, it's 1 a.m. for you. And 3, oh wow, you guys are committing. Or is that 3:30 in your afternoon, I imagine, for Yuki there. 1 a.m. in India, that's mad. You've committed, man. I really appreciate it though. I did have one person who, when he was in my classes, he's been in these streams before. His name's Karim. He was, I don't know if he still is, but he was living, I believe he was living in Egypt, and he would like come into my animation mentor classes at like 3:30 in the morning, and then like have to listen to me give this really in-depth like 2-hour lecture. That's like, you've got some freaking willpower on you, because I could not do that, especially for like 12 weeks straight. I was very impressed, and I mean his work turned out great. So the thing that's also interesting by doing the blocking process this way is I'm not really planning where she needs to finish. I am planning based on the timing of my reference is going to indicate where the next contact position is, and then I'll figure out the stride length, and that will then determine where she finishes. As opposed to being like, I want her to finish at this position, how do I get her there? They're two different methods, and I probably, you can end up kind of blending both methods into one as well, is one technique, like a different technique you can use. So I will probably end up, if she just isn't where I want her to be by the end of the shot, based on the method we're currently using, then I will definitely start just reworking to make it work. Like, even if that's changing her staging or where her feet placements are, or maybe the timing of the rhythm of the footsteps. Like, there's lots of different ways you can approach it. So this foot actually needs to be slightly more tilted this way. So at this position here, we need to be, there you go, turning that foot into where she's going to roll off from. So then in here, we can add the roll, which will then help determine where that stride position is going to be, which is roughly here. But I definitely want her to be leaning forward. I want her to have quite a narrow gait. And what I mean by that is her feet don't go too wide. They keep kind of inwards. So it'll be something along these lines. And then at this stage, the arms will have dropped. Both her shoulders. I want to keep her shoulders up though, even though she's swinging her arms down, I want to keep her tight up like she's trying to cover her face. Like that's part of the context. And then this arm's dropping as well. Definitely feels like she's just taken too large of a step forward there on this stride. That back leg just feels like it's kind of getting left behind slightly. So I think I need to knock this back a bit and then lower that foot roll. Something along these lines. Again, we can rework some of this stuff later if we need to. How long did it take me to find a position as an animator in general after graduating? Just to give you full context, I applied to a lot of places, but I didn't get many responses from them. I know that's kind of like a thing at the moment where, you know, people are struggling to find work. But even then, back 10 years ago, it was still a thing then as well. And yeah, I think I applied to lots of places. All in the UK. I didn't apply abroad. But I applied to all the studios in the UK at the time, which there were more of at the time. There are less studios now in the UK. But out of all of those, there were 2 who were interested. But to get to the interview process with them took about 7 months of like not hearing anything. So I applied to all these places, kept on reaching out, trying to work on my reel and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it took about 6 months. Then I had an interview, and I ended up getting both interviews gave me offers. Well, actually, one of them wasn't even an interview. So first one was an interview, and that was at a game company called Frontier, which are in Cambridge, which is where I grew up. So I was living at home at the time with my parents, and so that was very practical. And from my parents' perspective, they were very much like, oh yeah, go for that one because it's close to home. But I was very much like, no, I need to get into London. That's where the industry is. And yeah, I think so. That one was for Planet Coaster, which I'm sure some of you guys might know that game. But that's when that first came out. That was what I would have worked on. So that was the gaming route. And then there was what I wanted to go for was a studio called Blue Zoo, which are a primarily children's TV animation studio. Do stuff for like the BBC and Nickelodeon and that kind of stuff. Or Nick Jr. And yeah, they just had a lot of variety in style, and they did like some short films. It was in London. Like I just liked how experimental they were with their own work. And yeah, I didn't have an interview with them, but we had a postgraduate show, which was essentially after we'd officially graduated 6 months later, like 6-7 months later. We had a graduation show, which the university got a space in London, which was, I believe it was NPC's basement. They had like a little screening room underground under the studio, where they would normally screen dailies when they're doing their work and stuff. And there they hosted an event where they basically invited lots of different people from the industry and different studios to present our work as students, be like, hey, here's all these graduate short films that people have made. Are any of them you interested in? And what most of those studios would do is they were already shown the films before they came. They would take notes of the artists that they liked, and then instead of having to like look through all of these films, which would take like an hour, and then like make notes of all the people within that you were more interested in speaking to, they already obviously had done their due diligence, found the artist that they had liked, and then would just, instead of watching the films with everyone else, they would just go and hunt for those people in the room. So I was actually, it worked out in my favor a lot that Blue Zoo were interested in the work that I had done on the short film, and they wanted to. It was like the most casual interview I've ever had, because we weren't sitting down in a room, we were standing next to them having we both had drinks in our hands, and they just wanted to get to know me a little bit. And they said that they were interested in my work and if I'd be open to going into commercials. And I was like, yeah, Blue Zoo is the company I want to work for, which I think was very nice. They were very glad to hear that too. And then, yeah, it was a very short project. It was only, the contract was 2 weeks long, which meant I still had to live at home. So I couldn't move to London because, who's going to live in London on a 2-week contract? And yeah, it was pretty crazy. I basically, because I didn't want to have to commute every day to London, because it would have taken me like 2 hours to get in every day. And this is obviously before COVID time, so everything's in the office. I ended up, I ended up staying in a hotel for those 2 weeks initially. It was for a pilot episode. For anyone in the UK, you may know, or at least it's more famous in the UK. There's a famous children's book called The Hungry Caterpillar, and the original author of that wanted to do, maybe it's not a UK thing, maybe it's an American thing as well. Looks like an international thing, but yeah, they were doing The Hungry Caterpillar and they were trying to make a TV show out of it. And we were doing the pilot episode, so it's me and one other animator called Sam Webster. Some of you may have heard of his name before. He mentors at Lupin House, works at DNEG Animation, and yeah, we worked on that together. That was our first job. We're very good friends now, and yeah, that was the first thing. But it's only for 2 weeks. Then it got extended to I think they gave us an extra month, and I was like, okay, so now I need to stay in a hotel, because again, it's just not enough time. So I ended up staying in a hotel again for an extra month, a different hotel this time. It was a bit closer to London than the previous one. And yeah, I basically was just doing that for a while, and I think I ended up, I'm trying to think now, I believe I ended up going back and forth, working on this project, getting small extensions, and I think I ended up doing, staying in a hotel for maybe 2.5 months or something. This is mad. And obviously I'm paying for that as well. And you're not getting paid very much on the job. It's just experience at this point, really. And so, yeah, it was a good experience. But basically, what it came down to is, even though that was my first job, it just wasn't stable, and it was just that I was basically living week to week, and they were only telling me when my extension on my contract would happen, maybe 2 weeks before it happened, sometimes even a week. And I'd be like, guys, I need to know if I'm being extended or not, because I need to book a hotel. And so that was, yeah, it was pretty mad. And basically what it came down to is commercials said, look, we can give you 4 months of stable work, or in all this time, this is a long story, but in all this time whilst I was there, I was trying to learn from everyone. And there was another guy called Ben Steer who still works at Blue Zoo to this day. And he's an incredible animator as well. I was learning a lot from him. He was kind of like my side mentor. He was one of the most respected animators at the company, and I kept on asking him for feedback. And yeah, basically in that whole time, I kept on saying to him, how do I get onto the TV department? Because I was working commercials and pilot episodes. I was like, I really want to work on the children's TV side. That's where you're animating anywhere between 6 to 8 seconds a day. You're learning a lot. You get a whole bunch of shots to work on. That's where I wanted to be. So I was like, how do I get in with these guys? And then he was like, oh, just keep, try and prove yourself. Just keep working hard, and we'll put a word in for you. Just let them know that you're interested in joining TV, and if a spot becomes available, we'll let you know. And then that's when, around this time, when they were like, we can give you 4 months, they brought me into a meeting and they said, we can give you 4 months in commercials, or you can go to the TV side as an animation fixer. So not like a junior, you would be going into other people's shots and fixing them. And you could do that for, I think it was nearly a year. It was like 11 months, 10, 11 months. So I was like, okay, I'm taking that. I'll do the fixing. You know, I won't be animating, but I'll go into the shots, I'll fix the shots, and then I'll prove myself and then work my way up. And yeah, that's what I did. So I got to, that's when I worked on a TV show called Digby Dragon, which was on Nick Jr. Still very fond of that TV show to this day. Like, I'd love to work on a season 3 just for the laugh. They're really fun characters. So yeah, that's where my first job started. It's a very long story, but maybe it's insightful for you guys. Sorry, I just got a backlog of chat comments here, so I'll just check that now. Yeah, a bunch of studios did shut down in the UK recently. So there was, well, 2 of my main fallbacks, which was, I say fallbacks, they're great studios, or were great studios. So there was Axis Studios, who did mostly game cinematics. They're similar to where I work now, Blur, very similar kind of company. But they were based in Scotland. They also did their first feature film, Scrooge, on Netflix a couple of years ago. Like 2-3 years ago. And then Jellyfish Pictures recently shut down as well. Which is where I worked on Spirit Untamed, How to Train a Dragon Homecoming, a TV show called Flugels, and more recently Dogman. But yeah, they shut down as well, unfortunately. So there's, in terms of character animation, there's only a small handful of studios left in the UK now to really work for. There's DNEG, there's Island Feature is coming out soon, which will be very exciting. Definitely going to try and gun for them. I've been trying to get into DNEG for ages. It's a bit of a lost cause at this point, honestly, but I will keep trying. Yeah. There's a few other places. But for features, there's only like 2, really. Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks is pretty crazy, right? Yeah, it's the Hungry Caterpillar, exactly. It's quite fun, right? So we weren't doing the Hungry Caterpillar ourselves. We were doing one called, it's called like the 10 Rubber Ducks or something, but it's by the same author. We were literally just animating like 2 and here you go, 10 little rubber ducks. This is what we were working on, and it was like basically these rubber ducks get lost at sea, and it literally looks like this. Like it was a 1-to-1 representation. It looked like cardboard cutout style paint strokes, and it was all just like on cards, and we were animating cards, and like there were some rigs. There was like a pelican that I animated. There was, this is the mother duck, so she was obviously rigged as well. So you could move like basic stuff. You could move their neck, their head, their jaw, but it was all 2D. Like there was no 3 dimensions. Or if there was, no, I tell a lie. It was 3-dimensional, but it was very basic because they wanted to kind of preserve this style. But like this image here is so nostalgic for me now because this is literally like they would take stills from the book pages and then like just recreate them, and then we would animate them. That's basically what we did. Like I remember Sam animating both these actually. He did the dolphin and the seal. I remember there was an octopus, which was like new. To this day we joke about it because him trying to, when you're like a junior animator, trying to animate an octopus was an absolute nightmare because of all the tendrils and everything. Looks like I can't find it right now, but yeah, we laugh about that to this day. So we've got another step in there. Again, I'm going to layer in all the nuances once I've got a few more keys to work with. I just want to get the core mechanics down first. Because right now she's kind of walking a little slower, which is part of the attitude. But if I need to kind of get her in, I may end up needing to make her walk a bit faster. Just get these contacts down first. just get a very rough position of each step, so I kind of have a good idea of where the staging is going. Because this is where she's going to reach out and grab the... I'm not even sure quite how I want to do it yet, but yeah, something along these lines. She's going to grab, maybe it's like some kind of disc, or like, ideally it'd be money. And then I was like, how would you, in a cybernetic, like a cyberpunk world, how would you hand over money to someone? Or how could you transfer money? Like, you could like hover your hand over, and then there's like some kind of connection, and then like, you know, you could signal visually that something's been accepted. Or it could just be something physical. I feel like in this case, just to make it read, it needs to be physical. So I was like, what could currency look like, you know, in this kind of world? So I was like, maybe it could be a disc, maybe it could be some kind of drive. I don't know. Still something I'm kind of debating. I wanted to kind of feel a little inconspicuous though, like she's not drawing attention to herself, so I don't want her arms to reach out too far. Like the bouncer could be like here, for instance. Oh, it's frozen. Don't break, don't break. Phew. For the first... So when I got that first job at Blue Zoo, I ended up staying at Blue Zoo for around 2.5 years. So I did that initial pilot episode for the rubber duck thing. Then I worked on Digby Dragon, and then I did Go Jetters Season 2, which is for the BBC, like another children's show. And in that time, I had no time to work on personal work. I was literally just like, you know, trying to stay afloat. Each project I worked on, like, so Digby Dragon was in Stepped. It was on 2s. I can even show you work from it. Where have I got it? Got some stuff in here somewhere. You can see some... Who would like to see some really janky old junior animation from me? See what I can find. Okay, so this was nearer the end of the project. So this stuff wasn't as bad.
It's a crash test, Grizzle. It's a crash test, Grizzle.
But yeah, this was on 2s. Oh, here you go. Here's my actual reel for it. Where'd you go? Oh, I've got play blasts of whole episodes, so you can see as a junior what shots I was casted.
Yes.
So this stuff isn't mine. This is. One thing that you'll notice is through all of this, I'm able to hit key poses, but like my workflow is just a complete mess. I was basically animating straight ahead. Like I didn't know what Tween Machine was. Like it was, yeah, just a bit of a mess. See how I just have this random stray key where Digby in the back, the green dragon, just moves to one frame and then just stops again? Yeah, there's like barely any ease-ins and outs. It's very pose-centric. I remember this being a pain. Like, there's this rope rig. They thought, oh, I know what's the most notoriously difficult thing to animate. Ropes. Okay, at least in 3D. And then they're like, who should we give this to? Oh, let's just give it to the junior who just started on the project. But yeah, I think I'm a testament that don't hire people who aren't ready. Because I definitely, honestly, I wasn't ready. But they took a gamble on me, and obviously it paid off eventually when I just tried to put in the hard work. But I think
very much.
I just wasn't given
That's a good thing.
the right guidance at university to know how to do it. And some people picked it up really well, and they just they studied really hard. They all, obviously everyone works really hard, but there was something that just wasn't clicking for me at the time, and it was mostly like working in spline. It was workflow. It wasn't principles. It was understanding how I can make an efficient workflow that actually makes sense to get the results on screen. And I really struggled with that, even through the whole of that project on Digby. And when I eventually worked on Go Jetters, it was a similar thing. Like, my very first episode of Go Jetters, I struggled with a lot as well. And then we have one last step here, or it's like I think it's like a step and a half. So this is the next contact. Which is roughly around here. I know we've done a bit of a detour from CYBERPHONK today for a little bit, but it's it's interesting when you bring up these questions about like where I started and stuff. I know it's valuable to some people who might be in the chat, so I think it's important to discuss these things, and if there's any way that it can somehow help someone, I'm all down for it. Because I think, I don't know, the reason I teach to begin with is because there wasn't really many resources out. There was resources, not as many as there are now, but there were some resources out there when I was learning, but just not enough. I just didn't have any guidance of knowing what I should be doing when and why. And so I think this is just my way of being like, I'm trying to give to people what I wish I had. So I do feel like, I don't know, I feel like I have a responsibility to try and help other people. I think that foot stride can be a bit wider. And then this can be a little lower. Something along these lines. It's quite a wide stride here, but she's got to get in there. She's got to get in the bar. And then at the very end, we're just about making that last contact. I think that's just enough. So we'll get one more contact, and then we can, at least we have a play blast so we can play it out and see how it feels. So then the hips again needs to be twisted just to connect that part. This foot needs to be healed up. So yeah, she's kind of stepping into the bar. I think that's kind of nice. I may end up shifting her a little bit more to the left, possibly. I think it's working. I'll play it through, like we'll give it a play blast and see how it feels. And then we have this part here, of course, as well, which, again, I'm not even sure if this is working yet. So we'll give it a play and just see if it's working or not, or it's completely broken. Play blasts. I appreciate Animation Addicts. I think amazing might be a stretch. I think there's potential there. Whenever I look back on that stuff, I can see what I was trying to achieve. It may not necessarily, like, there's definitely a lot of room for improvements. But I could see what I wanted to do and where I was trying to take it. I think that's that's obviously a big part of it. Hey Julie, how's it going? And yeah, guys, like, by all means, if you don't want to hear more about my background, just say, like, Aaron, just stick to CYBERPHONK. That's what we're here for. Or if you are genuinely curious about this stuff, then, like, I'm an open book. There is no question that you can ask me that's wrong. If you're curious to know more about my background with animation and stuff, then just ask me questions. I'll always answer. Yeah, I think it's getting there. There's definitely something about that pose that feels odd, though. So the jump, I did have a gut feeling it wasn't going to quite work. This part through here. So she's coming around, she kicks off. At this point here, she definitely needs to be beginning to turn more. This needs to come around. She needs to be beginning to twist. She kicks there. Coming into the air. I'm just experimenting a little bit here. Maybe this leg just actually needs to go into the straight away. And then this needs to pass through earlier. Still not enjoying this neck pose. I think it's the shoulders. The shoulders on this rig just generally aren't that great, honestly, but I can always make some shape editor fixes later if necessary. The only real area of critique I have in this rig, the rest of it's really nice. And then yeah, like I obviously need to add some in-betweens in here to get this weight to come through a bit clearer. There's a lot of time between here and here. It is in the reference. Maybe it'll work. It's the fact that we're traveling to screen left and yet her body is pointing to the right is not working. Which is why at this point here it does work. But then as we get to this point here, I do think we need to cheat more. downwards. Something along these lines might help. And then I think this camera needs to be punchier as we come up. Tighten this a bit more. Yes, here. Now, this is the issue. Is as it's going, landing here and coming around, I can't. What I would normally do to fix this is shift everything to the right, so that when she lands, she's more further to the right, so that the jump works. But she actually needs to be more to the left, if anything, so that she's slightly more to the left as she's ending through the door. So the only other way to make this work, so that I can get the trajectory to land, so that she can stay to the left here, is this needs to still be more here. I think I'm just going to end up cheating it. Sometimes it's just gotta be done. That pose there still needs to be more to the left. Or to the right, sorry. There you go. That works. And then I'm just going to tilt up a little bit more through this here. So we have the landing, which is fine here, but then that's the overshoot. So by this point here, we definitely need to settle up so that we can read her head more as she gets close to the camera. It's tricky. I might need to slightly play with the focal length just a touch. The alternative is that she just doesn't get as close to camera. So I might also play with that a little bit. It might be easier. So what I'll do is we can go into perspective mode. Take all the IK. So where she lands here, this foot here can be further back. Now, this is where we can use a little layer trick. So what I can do is from this pose onwards, the only things we need in IK, I believe, is elbow joints, knee joints, IK hands, anything IK essentially, and the root. So that's in. Now we can add a layer to this. Animation layer. Let me save this before we break anything. And then I'll save a key. And then the next keyframe we have, which is when she lands here, this we can shift it all back. Ah, interesting. It is in world space, right? Yeah. Why is the knee sliding differently? Okay, maybe we don't need to select the knees. So we're going to shift that slightly back. So now everything beyond this point, she's now a little bit further away from us, so that by here, I can just slightly reposition to get the staging right. And then I'll snap that on this one. So that's the position. So everything, all the contacts remain the same. But now when she steps, she's actually even more to the right than what we want, really. The only silver lining is this does give us a little bit of space to hand over because there's more negative space in the doorway, but honestly I do want her a bit more to the right. until the screen left. I want her more here. So if I just take that, I wonder what happens. So this is where she's going to land. So on this key, if I now that's working for what I need it to do, and then from here I can bake it down. We can turn off my horrendous reference. Let's merge this back down. Make sure Smart Bake is ticked, which it is. And then from here, I can use that as a base to rework the parts in the jump. And I might need to tweak the camera slightly, just the timing of it. I think I'm a perfectionist, spending too much time on things that don't matter as much. It helps seeing how you progress step by step. Yeah, I could definitely resonate with that, and I think that's why I kind of liked going into TV, is you don't have time to be a perfectionist. You just move straight on to the next thing. Because, personally, I do believe that anyone can achieve any amount of results or with enough notes. So if I'm sitting here, someone who's never touched animation before, and I can say to you, okay, move this arm here. And then you do a drawing or a pose, whatever it might be, and then they copy it. And then they go on to the next thing, and you think as they're copying those things, they are learning, they're picking up stuff. But because they're not making those choices and those mistakes themselves, sometimes, they end up just addressing the notes. And eventually it's going to look amazing, but maybe it took them a whole year to just do one shot. So really what it comes down to is sometimes you just need to do something. Don't be a perfectionist about it. And try it, and if it's breaking, if it's not working, that's okay. But it shows you, it really exposes where your issues are, or not issues, but like where your weaknesses are, and that's the areas that you can focus on the most. And I kind of do that even to this day with every project I work on. I kind of look back on it afterwards and be like, okay, when I look at this work, based on what I was asked to do, what did I lack in the most? What could I improve on the most? And then in the next project, I try and address that thing. And then eventually you're kind of building up all your strengths to make you a stronger candidate, in just as a general overhaul. But yeah, I completely get it that we don't, like, it's easy to get really precious about your work when we want to prove to everyone how great we can do stuff, and you want it to be like kind of like what I'm doing now, right? Like I'm being very picky about every choice I'm making and trying to make this amazing piece that I'm going to feel really proud of. And you do get really specific and you spend a lot of time on it. But I think especially at the beginning, it's kind of important to just like let those things go, and like, yes, we have these big ambitions, but sometimes you have to take a step back and be like, is this really the right time to be sinking all this time to something when my core foundations aren't quite there yet? I'm not calling this out to anyone. I'm like specific. I'm saying this as a general note to anyone who's still in their like learning phases. Because it's really easy to kind of like, especially at the beginning, I had loads of crazy ideas and ambitions, and I just wasn't able to execute them. And it didn't stop me trying. I did all sorts of shots that just didn't turn out very well. But I spent a lot of time on them, they still didn't look good. Whereas if I just maybe done some shorter exercises, got in, tried to do my best, and then got out again, and then reflected on it, and then moved on to the next thing, then the next thing would look even better. And you'd probably learn faster. So as we're coming through here, I definitely want to make my camera faster. As we have this ease out, so all of this transition here, it's mostly my translate. I think it's these guys. Need to be a little tighter. So I don't really want to lose the keys, so I'm going to just make this a little faster. Just so we reach this point a little earlier, because I don't want her to be so far screen left. That's already helping a lot. Yeah, that feels better. I do feel like maybe it doesn't need to rotate around to the left so much. Let's try in here. Let's just shrink this down, this part here. I'm going to scale this to the left so that she's more screen right. That's better. Something along these lines. And then I think the camera doesn't need to actually be tilted up as much as what we had before now. So in here, this can actually go lower. This staging feels nice. Just get a little bit more breathing room up the top than the bottom. And then we're easing it at the end into the final position. Yeah, that feels good. So what I'll do is I will play blast this again, make sure it feels right in playback, and then I think we're good for the ending, at least for like a first blocking pass. And then when we get into doing blocking plus, then, you know, maybe we can block in some passing positions, just so that we have a little bit more fidelity in here for these contacts. We can do that before we finish today, because that shouldn't take too long. And then that'll just give us a little bit more sense of the timing. But I'll just make, before I go any further on that, I'll just make sure that the actual staging works. So I'm just going to play blast again. I'm looking for my first job, preferably remote and freelance. Should I apply in my own country or around the world? I'd say around the world. I'm doing the same at the moment as well. You never, especially with freelancing, some studios, even with freelancing, are going to be like, you have to reside in XYZ, but many of them will say you can, you know, they pay you in their own currency and then you transfer it on your end, or they can transfer when they wire you, whatever it might be. But they can, some companies will allow you to work from your own country that's different from theirs. So sometimes, all I will say is, as you're applying for jobs, sometimes in the requirements or the job description, it will describe whether they want you to work in their country or not. Like, for instance, there was one that came up on LinkedIn the other day that's for the mobile app Monopoly Go, and they were looking for an animator, but they needed someone who either lived in the US or Canada. So I was like, okay, I can't apply to that one even though it's a freelance job, and it was remote. Or I think maybe it was hybrid, I can't remember. I have a feeling it was most likely remote if they were saying one or the other in terms of country. But yeah, you know, sometimes they will describe. If they don't describe and they're just looking for a freelancer, just apply. Like, there was a job at Pixar that was posted not long ago to work in their promotional department. So like, I assume it's like for their advertising of the next following movie and that kind of stuff. And it didn't specify that you had to like live near Glendale. So I applied to it. I was like, why not? Well, you didn't specify that I couldn't work from the UK. I'm sure you want me to move to the US, but because you didn't specify, what's the harm in me applying? So I applied. But you never know, right? Like, the worst they can do is say no. I guess you don't want to come off as incompetent in the sense that maybe they already did tell you, like maybe they described in the job description certain criterias that you clearly aren't meeting out the gate, and that can maybe show that you didn't read it properly, so you don't really want to do that. So I would say always read the job descriptions, of course, just to see if they have specified anything. If they haven't, then apply. That's my that's my approach. Cool. So we've got version 33 here. I'll give us a play. Yeah, it feels pretty good. I'll get some in-betweens in there. If it feels too sluggish at the end, I did kind of want it to calm down, because the music kind of calms down as well. So I wanted her to play it more casual, where she kind of steps in, and I still wanted her to have this whole idea of like her tucking in and like, you know, not showing her face too much, and there'll be a bit of attitude to the way she walks, which we will block in once we get a few more keys. Right now it's kind of a little bit vanilla, like we've got her upper half, but the nuance in how she moves, I think I would still want to get in there, which isn't quite communicating right now. But despite that part, if I can just get this timing down a little bit more, I think that will help. Just get a few more in-betweens. So now that I've got the key poses, it's actually very easy to do this. So we have this contact, which I think we already have enough keys in here, but between this and this, we don't have a passing, which even the reference will show you where that passing is, which is in here. So do 50% in Tween Machine. Our weight is going to be on the right leg, her right leg, and she's going to come up. So her right foot needs to be flat. The left leg is passing through. Make sure I turn off all of the foot rolls as well. Keep that knee out a little wider. Get a little bit of weight in the hip, which by extension would do a little bit in the chest. Again, we won't do too much of the nuance too early, but it's nice to get a little bit in there. And naturally, we can already begin to bring the arms up into position. And then we already have a few in-betweens for that part. But then here we need another in-between, which in our ref, the passing is around here. So again, use Tween Machine, go halfway between so that we keep the inertia. Now we're shifting our weight onto her right leg again. So we come up, shift it a little bit to the right. Make sure the right foot is all zeroed out. Make sure the left foot is all zeroed out. Left foot comes over. Something along these lines. Then we can get a little bit of weight in the hips, so the hips tilt this way, chest tilts this way, root slightly to the left, and then same thing again. We have another one in here, which is around this point, and then we'll clean up the curves a bit later. Do I know any studios that prefer remote candidates? I don't understand why they why would a studio say remote but UK only? Tax. That's your answer. So for some people, they do freelance jobs either because the contract is too short and they need people urgently, so they hire them freelance so that there's less paperwork, and you do your own taxes. But sometimes it's for their own incentives. They need you to be in their country so that they can claim tax exemptions and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the main reason why they would ask you to reside in their country. Some of them don't mind so much, and you just file your own taxes, and you know you're in limited company, whatever it might be, and then you just take it from there. And it's up to your own devices to figure that stuff out. Like for instance, when I was working at Moon Studios, they're an Austrian-based Austrian-based company. So they actually paid in dollars, but we were all freelancers. The arm's coming around and tucks in. And then we have the contact. That's another passing here. So now this is on the right leg. So again, always want to zero out any foot rolls or like blend shapes, extra joints on the feet when the foot is in the air. You see those little weight shifts in there now. She's taking those steps. Again, it's nothing crazy at this stage, but it's just enough to give us something to build on as we go through later. Another passing here. That step is really long. There. Oh, that needs to be earlier. Then there. One frame earlier. Then this passing is around here. Same ordeal. So it's just rinse and repeat at this stage, really, just to get those passings fleshed out. She's not doing any extra crazy mechanics over the top of it. Now, with her arm here, need to double check if she's easing out. I might bring the arm out earlier just so that we do read that arm in the beat. Something like that. So it's during the passing, she brings it out. And then we have another passing around here. This spacing is going to be a little bit off. So what I can do is I can spline this. Let's delete the key, hit spline, insert the key. Then we have the correct position for the transition. In her Z, then we go up to the right, foot on the left. Now it's coming through. something like that. And then we want the hips again. And last but not least, one more last contact, or passing, sorry, which is around here. So this one's on her left leg. I have a feeling I forgot to reset them on this one as well. Yeah, I did. There you go. It's better. Right leg, come up. Oh, why is that so offset now? That right leg. Why is that so offset? I don't understand. Whoa, that's gross. What's going on there? Yeah, that's correct. Why is that now so offset? Did I accidentally select the wrong control? Oh, I did as well. So this one, we're coming through. Just for these last two keys, that last one here, I forgot to position it with the IK control. That should be feeling better now. And voila! So now we got some passings. So she comes through, jumps, lands, and we've got a couple of passing positions. I think it's probably going to feel a little bit too side shimmying, like left to right, but it's enough to build from for now, and then we can get really into the nuances as we begin to do Blocking Plus, and we'll go stage by stage. But yeah, I'll give it a play blast, and then I think we'll be in a good position to leave it here, and then we'll yeah, we'll see where we get on with the next one. I think with the next one, well, in the meantime, what I plan to do is experiment with how to set up her what's it called? How to set up the mechanical arm to fold in on itself. That camera's gone really high for some reason. I have no idea why. In here. Where's my camera? Oh, I was on the 2D pan. I'm a muppet. Let's try that again, shall we? But yes. So what my technique I was thinking of doing is the actual geometry of her arm that we're using for the rig. I'll have it key to turn on and off, and then I'll have a duplicate version of that geometry, which will be under a group, which is constrained to her upper arm, which I can then animate the geometry on and off just through that section, which isn't skinned to the rig. It's just constrained in a group, and then when it eventually folds into position, into the correct slot position for the final forearm position, then all the animated geometry turns off and the actual rig turns on, and then it's all skinned. So I know that might sound a bit rushed the way I just described it then, but I will do that on stream, so you'll see how I set that up before we start blocking it out. But I also do want to film some reference in the meantime for the beginning, so that we have a rough idea of how I want that to play out rhythmically, and some of the performances there. So similar thing to what we did today. I'll go away, I'll film some reference, I'll implement it, and then that gives us a base to start blocking out some extra stuff. So yeah, that'll be the next stream. We'll be reblocking the beginning, which will be one of the bigger reblocks we need to do, and then there's some smaller reblocks we need to do that are near the middle, but I don't think they'll take too long, in theory. Last famous words. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. So what I'll do is I'll play this through and see what progress we made today, and then we'll call it there. Yeah, I think that's working pretty well. Awesome, guys. So yeah, cheers for tuning in, and really appreciate having you all here. So in the meantime, hope you all have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and stay tuned for when I'll post on Twitter or LinkedIn for the next stream. But in the meantime, have a good one, guys.